Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be taking a look at an interesting article that came out recently on ESPN Plus from Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano. Now, we're not going to look at the entirety of this article because we would be here for a pretty long time, but in this article, it talks about NFL Week 18 buzz, upsets, coaching hot seats, which is the topic that we are going to be diving into today, and MVP picks. So, basically, how this article is structured is it is a conversation between Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler. Dan Graziano will essentially say or type something in, and Jeremy Fowler will respond. And it talks about all of the head coach openings or guys who are possibly on the hot seat. Bill Belichick is in there. You have Matt Eberflus, who is in there as well. And as you guys can see at the end of this paragraph specifically, if you do want to pause and read it, you can go ahead and do so. Dan Graziano starts the conversation here by saying, and then there's the NFC South, where I think it's possible that any of the coaches who don't end up winning the division could be in trouble. Thoughts, Jeremy? So what is firstly interesting to me in this is that I think it's possible that any of the coaches who don't end up winning the division could be in trouble. Not to say that it is a guarantee that any of the coaches in the NFC South who don't win the division could be in trouble, but it's possible they could be in trouble. And then also, to kind of go off of that even a little bit more, to say who don't end up winning the division could be in trouble. Does that mean that if Todd Bowles wins the division, he's automatically safe in the eyes of Dan Graziano? I don't know. That's just kind of an interesting piece of information there that maybe I'm diving a little bit too much into it, so to speak, but also you take a look at that little snippet there, and it kind of raises some questions of, so it's not automatically in trouble in Dan Graziano's mind if a coach in the NFC South doesn't win the division, and if they do win the division, doesn't seem like Graziano even feels like that is a concern if they, in terms of them and their coaching stability, so to speak, for lack of a better word here. So then Jeremy Fowler dives into a little bit. Spoken to some people around the league who feel like Arthur Smith is safe or Atlanta doesn't want to make a move. Then you talk about aren't bracing for a change with Dennis Allen either. So it seems like, at least in Jeremy Fowler's opinion, Arthur Smith and Dennis Allen seem to be safe in their respective teams, regardless of what happens in Week 18. The offense has improved late in this Week 18 matchup, looms large. What if one hands the other a lopsided loss? That could be a factor. So essentially, it seems like Dennis Allen and Arthur Smith may be safe in New Orleans and in Atlanta. But here's obviously the thing that we're going to be taking a look at here. This is regarding Todd Bowles. Again, you guys, I'm going to read the whole thing, I guess. Again, we're not going to dive into the entire article, but this is the paragraph I wanted to read here from Jeremy Fowler. Todd Bowles has done a nice job with a relatively young Bucs roster, though things could change should Tampa Bay lose its grip on the division with back-to-back losses, including one to two-win Carolina in the final week. Or I guess I should say, yes, though things could change. Okay, so it's talking about Todd Bowles. I misread this. So it's talking about Todd Bowles has done a good job with a relatively young roster. Things could change if the Bucs don't win the division. It's possible. That is what Jeremy Fowler is saying. I think a lot of people would agree that yes, that is pretty much a universal opinion, that if the Bucs lose the division, kind of in an ugly way, or I guess I should say in an ugly way of losing your last two games of the year when you only needed one win to clinch the division, even losing to a 2-win Carolina Panthers team, that would not be a good look. But here's where it gets interesting. But the Buccaneers staff hasn't really felt in danger here. That's Jeremy Fowler saying, hey, the Bucs coaching staff doesn't feel like their jobs are at risk here. The expectations going into the season were not overly high, and Bowles has 3 years left on his contract, so moving on would be a fairly hefty lift for the Glazier family. Beating Carolina would at least presumably take out the guesswork. So this is saying if the Bucs go in to Carolina, win the division, and go to the playoffs, Jeremy Fowler's saying, hey, that's probably going to take out a lot of the guesswork. That in Jeremy Fowler's mind, that is saying, look, the Bucs staff doesn't feel like they're in danger. Apparently expectations weren't super high going into the season. Bowles has 3 years left on his deal. And the Glazier family may be fine with what is going on here. And if they beat Carolina, they win that division, and they make the playoffs, seems like Fowler's saying it's more likelier than not that Bowles would be back. And that's even if they get demolished in the playoffs or anything along those lines in round number 1 to Philadelphia or Dallas or whoever it may be. So there are a couple of interesting pieces of information there, right? The Buccaneers staff hasn't felt in danger. They feel like they're in a good spot. The expectations were not high in the organization for how this year has gone. Fowler says that Bowles has done a good job, a nice job, I guess I should say, with a young Bucs roster. And a lot of it, things could change if the Bucs lose to Carolina in the final week. But the Bucs staff feels like they're in a good spot. And kind of taking a look at it from the Glazier family's perspective, it seems like there doesn't seem to be a lot of reasoning from Jeremy Fowler's perspective of, hey, expectations were not high. Bowles has 3 years left on his deal. He did a nice job with a young roster, and the Glazier family might not want to make a move firing a guy with 3 years left on his contract. So, and then finally, beating Carolina would presumably take out the guesswork. So, beating Carolina would possibly even solidify, hey, Todd Bowles is sticking around. So interesting. Interesting thoughts here from Jeremy Fowler on the Buccaneers situation, on Todd Bowles' situation, and the overall safety. Upon reading this paragraph, I thought, man, it definitely does seem like if the Bucs win in Week 18 versus the Carolina Panthers, not only does it look like they're going to the playoffs, they're winning the division and whatnot, but regardless of what happens in the playoffs, it seems like Todd Bowles may be back for another year. I think that, in my opinion, people may disagree. People may say, well, come on, can't read too far into it. We've seen other reports from local Bucs media that say the exact opposite and that predict the exact opposite from happening. But I don't know. Just reading this paragraph, reading this article, it's definitely made me more lean on the opinion of, hey, if the Bucs win and get into the playoffs, regardless of what happens, seems like Todd Bowles may be sticking around. So that's kind of my thoughts and opinions on this subject, on this opinion from Jeremy Fowler. I think that him saying that the Buccaneers staff hasn't really felt in danger here, him saying that the expectations were not overly high, those are two things that really speak to me to say, hey, if Bowles and his coaching staff go in, win in Week 18, win the division, go to the playoffs, pretty safe. Pretty safe to say that he is going to be staying the Buccaneers head coach for the upcoming season. That is my thoughts and opinions on this piece. Let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions about this down in the comments section below. I would love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed. And as always, guys, I will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.